Good day, beautiful people, and welcome back to my podcast, Life Treasures and Golden Moments. This is Natalie Silver. Well, we are still in the month of June, and this weekend is Father's Day. So today I would like to dedicate this program to all fathers everywhere and wish them a very happy Father's Day. And for you all out there that have fathers, if you're away from home, give them a call and tell them how much they mean to you. You still have time also to send a card or a postcard. Or if you're close to home, stop by and see them or take them out to lunch or go fishing or something. I know they would appreciate it. Today's story is called Why I Chose My Father to Be My Dad, and the author of the story is Betty B. Yuns. I grew up on a beautiful, sprawling farm in Iowa, raised by parents who often are described as the salt of the earth and the backbone of the community. They were all the things we know about good parents to be: loving, committed to the task of raising their children with high expectations and a positive sense of self-regard. They expected us to do morning and evening chores, go to school on time, get decent grades, and be good people. There are 6 children. 6 children. It was never my idea that there should be so many of us, but then no one consulted me. To make matters worse, fate dropped me off in the middle of the American heartland in a most harsh and cold climate. Like all children, I thought there had been a great universal mistake, and I had been placed in the wrong family, most definitely in the wrong state. I disliked coping with the elements. The winters in Iowa are so freezing cold that you might have to make rounds in the middle of the night to see that the livestock aren't stranded in a place where they would freeze to death. Newborn animals had to be taken to the barn and sometimes warmed up in order to be kept alive. Winters are that cold in Iowa. My dad, an incredibly handsome, strong, charismatic, and energetic man, was always in motion. My brothers and sisters and I were in awe of him. We honored him and held him in the highest esteem. Now I understand why. There were no inconsistencies in his life. He was an honorable man, highly principled. Farming, his chosen work, was his passion. He was the best. He was at home raising and caring for animals. He felt at one with the earth and took great pride in planting and harvesting the crops. He refused to hunt out of season, and even though deer, pheasants, quail, and other game roamed our farmlands in abundance, he refused to use soil additives or feed the animals anything other than the natural grains. He taught us why he did this and why we must embrace the same ideals. Today I can see how conscientious he was, because this was in the mid-50s, before there was an attempt at universal commitment to earth-wide environmental preservation. Dad was also a very impatient man, but not in the middle of the night when he was checking his animals during the late night rounds. The relationship we developed from these times together was simply unforgettable. It made a compelling difference in my life. I learned so much about him. I often hear men and women say they spent so little time with their fathers. Indeed, the heart of today's men's groups is about groping for a father they never really knew. I knew mine. Back then I felt as if I was secretly his favorite child, although it's quite possible that each of his 6 children felt that way. Now that was both good news and bad. The bad news was that I was the one selected by Dad to go with him for the midnight and early morning barnyard checks, and I absolutely detested getting up and leaving a warm bed to go out at night into the frosty air. But my dad was at his best and most lovable during those times. He was most understanding, patient, gentle, and was a good listener. His voice was gentle, and his smile made me understand my mother's passion for him. It was during these times when he was a model teacher, always focusing on the whys, the reasons for doing. He talked endlessly for the hour or hour and a half that it took to make the rounds. He talked about his war experiences, the whys of the war. He served in about the region, its people, the effects of war and its aftermath. Again and again he told his story. In school I found history all that more exciting and familiar. He talked about what he gained from his travels and why seeing the world was so important. He instilled a need and love of traveling. I had worked in or visited some 30 countries by the time I was 30 years old. He talked about the need and love of learning and why a formal education is important. And he talked about the difference between intelligence and wisdom. He wanted so much for me to go beyond my high school degree. "You can do it," he said over and over. "You're a Burrs. You are bright. You have a good mind, and remember, you're a Burrs." There was no way I was going to let him down. I had more than enough confidence to tackle any course of study. Eventually, I completed a PhD and later earned a second doctorate. Though the first doctorate was for Dad and the second for me, there was definitely a sense of curiosity and quest that made both easy to attain. He talked about the standards and values, developing character, and what it meant in the course of one's life. I write and I teach on a similar theme. He talked about how to make and evaluate decisions, when to cut your losses and walk away, and when to stick it out, even in the face of adversity. He talked about the concept of being and becoming, and not just having and getting. I still use the phrase, "never sell out on your heart," he said. He talked about gut instincts and how to decipher between those and emotional selves, and how to avoid being fooled by others. He said, "Always listen to your instincts and know that all the answers you'll ever need are within you. Take quiet time alone. Be still enough to find the answers within and then listen to them. Find something you love to do. Then live a life that shows it. Your goals should stem from your values, and then your work will radiate your heart's desire. This will divert you from all silly distractions that will only serve to waste your time. Your very life is all about time, how much you can grow in whatever years you're given. Care about people," he said, "and always respect Mother Earth. Wherever you shall live, be sure you have a full view of the trees, the sky, and the land." My father, when I reflect on how he loved and valued his children, I'm genuinely sorry for the youth who will never know their fathers in this way, or will never feel the power of character, ethics, drive, and sensitivity all in one person, as I do in mine. My dad modeled what he talked, and I always knew he was serious about me. I knew he felt me worthy, and he wanted me to see that worth. Dad's message made sense to me because I never saw any conflict in the way he lived his own life. He had thought about his life, and he lived it daily. He bought and paid for several farms over time. He's as active today as he was then. He married and has loved the same woman for a lifetime. My mother and he, now married for nearly 50 years, are still inseparable sweethearts. They are the greatest lovers I've known, and he loved his family so much. I thought he was over-possessive and protective of his children, but now that I am a parent, I can understand these needs and see them for what they are. Though he thought he could save us from the measles and almost did, he vehemently refused to lose us to destructive vices. I always see how determined he was that we be caring and responsible adults. To this day, 5 of his children live within a few miles of him, and they have chosen a version of his lifestyle. They are devoted spouses and parents. Agriculture is their chosen work. They are without a doubt the backbone of their community. There is a twist to all of this, and I suspect it's because of his taking me on those midnight rounds. I took a different direction than did the other 5 children. I began a career as an educator, a counselor, and a university professor, eventually writing several books for parents and children to share what I learned about the importance of developing self-esteem in the childhood years. My messages to my daughter, while altered a bit, are the values that I learned from my father, tempered with my life experiences, of course. They continue to be passed on. I should tell you a bit about my daughter. She's a tomboy, a beautiful 5'9" athlete who's led us in 3 sports each year, frets over the difference between an A- and a B, and was just named a finalist in the Miss Teen California contest. But it's not her outward gifts and accomplishments that remind me of my parents. People always tell me that my daughters possesses a great kindness, a spirituality, and a special fire deep inside that radiates outward. The essence of my parents is personified in their granddaughter. The rewards of esteeming their children and being dedicated parents have made a most nourishing effect on the lives of my parents as well. As of this writing, my father is at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota for a battery of tests, scheduled to take from 6 to 8 days. It is December. Because of the harsh winter, he took a hotel room near the clinic as an outpatient. Because of obligations at home, my mother was only able to stay with him for the first few days. So on Christmas Eve, they were apart. That night I first called my dad in Rochester to say Merry Christmas. He sounded down and despondent. Then I called my mother in Iowa. She was sad and morose. This is the first time your father and I have ever spent the holiday apart, she laminated. It's just not Christmas without him. I had 14 dinner guests arriving, all ready for a festive evening. I returned to cooking, but not being able to get my parents' dilemma fully off my mind, I called my older sister. She called my brothers. We conferenced by phone. It was settled. Determined that our parents could not be without each other on Christmas Eve, my younger brother would drive the 2 hours to Rochester to pick up my father and bring him home without telling my mother. I called my father to tell him of the plans. "Oh, no," he said. "It's far too dangerous to come out on a night like this." My brother arrived in Rochester and knocked at my father's hotel door. He called me from Dad's room to tell me he wouldn't go. "You have to tell him, Bobby. You're the only one he'll listen to." "Go, Dad," I said gently. He did. Tim and my dad started for Iowa. We kids kept track of their progress, the journey, and the weather by talking with them on my brother's car phone. By now, all my guests had arrived, and all were a part of the ordeal. Whenever the phone rang, we put it on the speakerphone so we could hear the latest. It was just past 9 o'clock when the phone rang, and it was Dad on the car phone. "Bobby, how could I possibly go home without a gift for your mom? It would be the first time in nearly 50 years I didn't get her perfume for Christmas." By now, my entire dinner party was engineering this plan. We called my sister to get the names of nearby open shopping centers so they could stop for the only gift my dad would consider giving Mom. The same brand of perfume he has always given her every Christmas. At 9:52 that evening, my brother and my dad left a little shopping mall in Minnesota for the trip home. At 11:50, they drove into the farmstead. My father, acting like a giggling schoolboy, stepping around the corner of the house and stood out of sight. "Mom, I visited Dad today and he said to bring you his laundry," my brother said as he handed Mom the suitcases. "Oh," she said softly and sadly, "I miss him so much. I might as well do these now." Said my father, coming out of his hiding, "You won't have time to do them tonight." After my brother called me to relay this touching scene between our parents, these two friends and lovers, I phoned my mother. "Merry Christmas, Mother." "Oh, you kids," she said in a crackling voice, choking back tears. She was unable to continue. My guests cheered. Though I was 2,000 miles away from them, it was one of the most special Christmases I'd ever shared with my parents. And of course, to date, my parents have not been apart on Christmas Eve. That's the strength of children who love and honor their parents. And of course, the committed and marvelous marriage my parents share. Good parents, Jonas Salk once told me, give their children roots and wings. Roots to know where home is, wings to fly away and exercise what's been taught them. If gaining the skills to lead one's life purposefully and having a safe nest and being welcomed back to this nest is the legacy of parents, then I believe I chose my parents well. It was this past Christmas that I most fully understood why it was necessary that these two people be my parents. Then I believe I chose my parents well. It was this past Christmas that I most fully understood why it was necessary that these two people be my parents. The winds have taken me around the globe, eventually to nest in lovely California. The roots my parents gave me will be an indelible foundation forever. What a lovely story and a beautiful tribute to a father whose daughter dearly loves him. I'd like to close today's podcast with a poem called Children Learn What They Live. If children live with criticism, they learn to condemn. If children live with hostility, they learn to fight. If children live with fear, they learn to be apprehensive. If children live with pity, they learn to feel sorry for themselves. If children live with ridicule, they learn to be shy. If children live with jealousy, they learn what envy is. If children live with shame, they learn to feel guilty. If children live with tolerance, they learn to be patient. If children live with encouragement, they learn to be confident. If children live with praise, they learn to appreciate. If children live with approval, they learn to like themselves. If children live with acceptance, they learn to find love in the world. If children live with recognition, they learn to have a goal. If children live with sharing, they learn to be generous. If children live with honesty and fairness, they learn what truth and justice are. If children live with security, they learn to have faith in themselves and in those around them. If children learn with friendliness, they learn the world is a nice place in which to live. If children live with serenity, they learn to have peace of mind. With what are your children living? This was a poem that was penned by Dorothy L. Nolte. And I think it wraps up that story today, that gal, the author of that story, why I chose my father to be my dad. He was a perfect example of a loving parent, and the mother too. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend out there, and that you honor your father this weekend if you have one, or if you've lost him, go by and remember him with a flower on his final resting place. You all take care. Until next time, may God bless. This is Natalie Silva.